Today, we have a special guest. He's sold over $50 million worth of real estate in his young professional career. Diego, thank you so much for being here. Talk to us a little bit about how you went from boxing to being a real estate agent and how you kind of made that pivot.
When I was 21, I read a book called The One Thing. It talks about focusing on one thing. It wasn't like I was boxing and doing real estate. It was kind of like I made the decision that I'm not going to box as my career and I want to get into real estate.
The mindset you need to be successful is
The mindset you need to be successful is
cheers, guys.
cheers.
And welcome back to another installation of the Doughboys podcast. I'm your host, Flipping It with Cisco. And as always, we have the lovely, studly Joshua McGill. And today we have a special guest. He is one of the top real estate agents in one of the most expensive markets in the area. He's been featured in magazines such as the Washington Magazine and Northern Virginia Magazine as one of the best real estate agents. He's sold over $50 million worth of real estate in his young professional career, including my house for a little around $500,000 or so. Diego, thank you so much for being here. How is it going?
It's going great, man. Thanks for the introduction. I'm excited to be here and talk real estate, talk business, and just talk life with you guys. Everything's going great. I can't complain at all.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for being here as well. But let's go ahead and jump right into it.
Sure.
Something that our viewers probably don't know because they don't really follow the local DC area
Yeah.
is you used to be a boxer
Right.
prior to being a real estate agent. So talk to us a little bit about how you went from boxing to being
Yeah.
a real estate agent and how you kind of made that pivot.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I'm gonna have to take you back a little bit further. I'll make it quick for you guys. Essentially, I grew up playing basketball my entire life, and just like a lot of young kids, I thought I was destined for the NBA, and all I wanted to do was play basketball, even if it wasn't in the NBA, professional basketball somewhere. I was certain that's what I was gonna do. Out of nowhere, like my fourth or fifth game, my senior year, I decided, you know what, I believe I want to pursue boxing. And I remember texting my brother, if I don't get a Division 1 offer, I think I'm going to pursue boxing. I just didn't want to play a D2 or D3 school at the time. And that same night that I texted him that I had a game and I just felt out of it, which is weird. Just kind of give you some context. I mean, I was a good player, made the all district team and things like that, MVP for my school, played AU, all that jazz. And yeah, just felt out of it and decided to leave the team. Everybody in my school thought I was crazy. I was getting put out of class from my principal, like, hey man, are you all right? Like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be going to college to play basketball. And I didn't really tell anybody. And just fast forward, I had a lot of success in boxing early on. Started off 9-0. I ended up finishing with 33 fights. I've won about 25 to 28 of those fights. Never been knocked out or anything like that. Amateur boxing. So a lot, I mean, you get knocked out in amateur boxing. I've had knockouts myself, but I've only lost razor thin fights. 3 of those fights that I lost, I've rematched the guys in and won. But yeah, same deal. It's weird. I just have like these little voices in my head. One
Epiphanies.
random day, I was 23, about to be 24, and I just thought to myself, I don't know if I want to lay all my eggs in boxing. I was supposed to turn professional that same year, and I was supposed to turn professional that same year, and I decided, you know what? I don't know if I want to lay all my eggs in this. Boxing is a career where you it takes time to actually make a living doing it. Even the best boxers, you don't make significant money to provide for yourself and your family until 5 years in, and that's if that happens, right? So uh again, this was when I was 23, 24. Not to spend too much time on this, but when I was 21, my uncle had a conversation with me about getting into the business. It intrigued me. I read a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, and that book, if you haven't read it, essentially talks about focusing on one thing in your business so nothing else matters. At the time, the way I took it was like, I got to go all in on boxing. And that's what I did for the next 2 years. Real estate was always in the back of my mind. I thought I could do well in it. But again, 2 years later, it just kind of hit me like, you know what? Let me try this out. I've always had a business mindset. I had a personal training business for a little bit, worked in sales at the gym, and I just thought I could do good at it. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I knew there was more growth, and I just almost made that decision as to it wasn't like I was boxing and doing real estate. It was kind of like, you know what, I made the decision that I'm not going to box as my career, and I want to get into real estate. So I was all in from the jump per se. So that's my little soapbox of how I got into real estate.
Bro, I love it. And just to kind of touch base on a couple of things that you mentioned. One, I had no idea that you were that far deep into basketball. Like,
Yeah,
but I think you finally realized that you're not quite 6'3", and you probably aren't going to make it to the NBA.
yeah. It was a lot of things that made me decide to
Absolutely.
box.
But one thing that you mentioned was that like with boxing, it's not like you're instantly going to start making money until like you kind of like make it. I actually saw an interview. I don't know if you're familiar with the UFC fighter Dan Ige, I think you pronounce his name. And he did an interview where just now, like in his 30s, like a bunch of UFC fights in, and he's been on a bunch of pay-per-views.
Okay.
He's now finally just making real money
Yeah,
because he might have like a contract with the UFC for like 200,000, but
yeah,
that's for two fights, and he has to pay
sure.
everyone around him too, his coaches, his trainers, his nutritionists, etc. So those 200,000 really doesn't go a long way for when you still have to feed your family and everything.
It doesn't.
um, but one of the things that I found really intriguing that he mentioned, because he's also like going into business, is he's been able to kind of really grab a lot of the things that he learned from being a fighter into business. Have you felt like the same experience, and kind of what are some of those things that you've been able to grasp from your boxing days into your now as a real estate career?
Yeah, no, great question. Definitely, boxing has really shaped me, and I feel like it. I spent a lot of my adulthood, right from like 17 to essentially 24, boxing. Introduced me to reading, introduced me to the power of the mind and understanding how to control my emotions, and that helped a lot, right? Because just fighting, you naturally get nervous before big fights, and or just any fight really. Whether you're fighting someone who has 100 fights, or you're fighting someone that you know should beat. I learned that early on. I think it was my seventh fight. Again, I'm undefeated at the time, and I'm fighting somebody at the Golden Gloves that I've sparred before, and I beat him up bad during sparring. So I knew for sure. I was like, I know I can beat this kid. I was excited to fight him, and it was I was in the back, getting my hands wrapped, and I was about to fight him, and I still felt myself nervous, and I was like, why do I feel nervous? I was like, I know I can beat this guy, and I ended up knocking him out in the second round. And but after that fight, I really started diving deep into the mind and just understanding that I'm in control of my emotions, learning how to perform under pressure, and it translates into real estate a whole lot, right? Just in general, boxing as a whole, just kind of backing up, it's a lot of routine that comes into boxing. It was very simplistic for me with boxing. It was like, okay, well, I know what I have to do to win. I have to run miles. I have to train. I have to study fights. I have to study my own tapes. I have to learn from my coach. And I knew what work I had to do to get the results. So when I got into real estate, again, it was just a sudden decision that I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So a lot of that beginning stages were me learning the business and learning what is the work that I have to do to grow my business, right? Like what is the studying, what is the actual actions that I have to do to grow my business. So boxing has definitely shaped my way of thinking and my way of doing business and just living life in general. We use a lot of boxing analogies between my brother and I. He's in the business as well, and we're always comparing different situations in life that we go through to our life in the ring. And it's just crazy how it correlates.
Yeah, so you mentioned you've got into real estate. So when you say you weren't really sure what you were getting into,
Yeah,
I'm assuming you weren't like just amazing at it from the get go because most times you're figuring it out.
sure.
But like, tell us what your journey was for making your first sale, and what was that first sale, and what was that like? Just tell us that story.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wasn't really aware what I was getting myself into because when I called my uncle and I told him, "Hey man, remember that conversation we had? Well, I'm serious this time. I'm ready to get started. Like what do I need to do?" He basically told me, "Go get licensed and then we'll talk." So, I got licensed like right away, like 3 months later as fast as I could do it. Passed my test in the first time. I was just devoted to this. And and then got I'm sorry, repeat your question. I'm like going all over the place. My first sale and how I got
Yeah,
started. Yeah. So
yeah, your first
uh,
sale.
the first couple years, it was slower. I was going to a lot of trainings and really trying to, like I said, just trying to understand the business. It actually took me 7 months to get my first sale. My first sale was actually my mom. So it was my mom. And then after that, I was actually working at IHOP at the time. I was working at a restaurant. Yeah. So I can't hear you, Cisco, by the way.
My bad, I muted myself.
No
Your
worries.
first job was at IHOP? That's hilarious because that was like my first job when I was 15. I was a host at the Ashburn IHOP.
It wasn't my first job, but it was a job that I was doing at the time because when I was boxing, I was actually working at UFC gym slash LA boxing. I was doing personal training sales and things like that. I ended up going to IHOP because I wanted something that I would be able to. At the time, I thought it would make me more money and it was more consistent, but it really wasn't. But I knew the manager. I had a good relationship with the manager, and he really looked out for my boxing career, and he allowed me to travel, take days off, and work with my schedule and things of that nature. So again, it took me 7 months to make my first sale. And after that, I sold a house the following month. And I remember I telling my boss, like, hey, man, give me like a month off. Let me figure this out. And, and then I'll get back to you to get back on a regular schedule. So, like, two more houses the following month. And ever since then, I never went back to the restaurant. So it took me like 7 months to make our first sale and then just kind of kept growing slowly. I wasn't that agent that you hear about that just came out of the gun just selling 100 houses their first year. I definitely took my time. Like that first year, I think I sold like 6 or 7 houses, right? So that last 6 7 months, I sold like 6 or 7 houses. It was enough for me to make a living and pay my bills and pay down some debt and things of that nature. I had no kids at the time, so it was a little less expenses. I still lived with my brother. He owned a house and I was just rooming with him, still paying rent. And then the following year, I sold like 10 houses. Same thing, doing it full time, but just managing my money right and still just kind of getting by. And then that third year, it was actually during COVID, the same year that I helped Cisco. I don't know if he remembers, I actually tore my Achilles.
Yeah,
Tore my
you were in boot.
Yeah, I tore my Achilles like a week before, a week before COVID and everything got shut down. So I was like super blown. I was actually pretty optimistic about it. I want to say I was super blown. I was aware of the situation because I played basketball for so long and I tore it playing basketball. Just at the gym after a workout. No one near me just blew it. Just happened out of nowhere. It was almost
Mm.
like a freak accident. And I remember thinking like, shit, I just blew my Achilles. I just knew it. But I digress. I remember being like, dang, well, I can't do anything, right? But then everything shut down like literally a few days later. Like no one can leave their house. And I was like, all right, well, this is not too bad. It's just kind of like the whole group thinking mentality. Everyone's chilling. I'm chilling. This is cool. But my business just got super busy during COVID. And Cisco can tell you, I had a boot on my right leg. So I had to learn how to drive with my left foot.
It
And I
was the funniest thing, man. We went to closing and it
yeah,
was probably like 40, 35 degrees outside. He had like a nice button up and then khaki shorts with his
Yeah.
boots.
Yeah.
I had to. That's so true. And then I eventually learned how to like maneuver out of it and things like that. And I would wear my jeans and stuff. But I was crawling up and down stairs and it was crazy because again, I was working with Cisco, but I was working with other clients as well. So I'm like driving all over the place and hopping out my boot. I'm meeting people for the first time and I'm thinking, are they gonna judge me for driving with my left foot? Because I'm like hopping out my car and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you for the first time. And they're like, is this guy all right?
Is he
But
for real?
yeah, so that third year, my business really took off. I did about, I don't know, 24, 25 transactions, made more income than I've ever made, more than I've ever really thought I could make. And then ever since then, we just continued growing, done about 13.5 million the last 3 years consistently. Um, so I want to say we plateaued, but real estate as a whole has really, transaction wise, a lot of transactions have gone down tremendously, just homes being bought and sold. So for us to maintain that same volume, we're definitely proud of that. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I can kind of speak to that too, because like when we sold my house, it was a record breaking sale for the neighborhood. So definitely got to be creative in different ways. But that kind of brings me into kind of my next question, right? So when you were first starting, you had other sources of income. You mentioned you were working at Title Fitness and you were doing IHOP, and then you were also working on your craft of being a real estate agent. So now that you're a little bit more seasoned, what are like the stream of incomes that a real estate agent has aside from just being the transaction and getting the commission from the sale?
That's a great question. I'll answer that this way: that I've always been a big believer in 10xing your one income in the beginning, and I feel like I'm still kind of there. Where I know a lot of people were just trying to diversify their income at different revenue streams, and that works for a lot of people. For me at the time, I was like, I just know that I have so much untapped potential in my real estate business that I just put all my focus in my real estate business and just making money that way. So I've done different investments that have made me incomes during the years with real estate and things of that nature. I'm investing more heavily into stocks now as well in regards of like long-term investing. I mess around with some trades, but mainly just long-term investing. But to answer your question, my main source of income is still real estate. And I am now to the point where I built up a very nice, just investment account and savings account, and our family's in a good place. We have 3 real estate properties on myself. So my net worth, my financial stability, you could say, is very solid, where I'm starting to explore different income streams and just different businesses, right? But right now, to answer your question again, it's my main income is definitely real estate.
So I want to hop back to that first sale.
Yeah.
How many no's did you get before you got that first yes?
It's a good question. I did a lot of rentals. I mean, I was busy. That first year, you could say, was a lot of learning and a lot of mindset. I remember meeting with I don't even know what to call him. It was the same lady who taught the real estate class for me, but she also worked at the Keller Williams office, and she was essentially the new agent coaches, right? And she would tell us to write down an income that you feel you want to make in your first year. And I was trying to be like somewhat realistic at the time. Again, I'm coming from making $40,000 at IHOP. So I'm like, I don't know, $70,000. She's like, no, you got to think bigger, like 150, 200. And I'm just like, doesn't sound realistic at all to me. And so that first year was just me really understanding the business. I didn't really feel like I belonged. Again, I was 23, 24 years old, surrounded by a lot of 50-year-olds. No offense to the realtors in my office, but it was older. It was like the young guy, and I didn't really feel like I belonged there. And I worked a lot of rentals, did a lot of training, just kind of getting going. And just knowing that I had the long-term vision, I wasn't really obsessed with just having immediate success. I knew that I had a big network from playing basketball for so long. I just had a lot of friends, traveled a lot, and just always had a good group of friends and always had a good reputation, right? Never done anybody wrong. I was always known as a hard worker, having a good work ethic, like first person in the gym, last person out the gym kind of deal. And I just kind of had to rebrand myself into a business person, into a real estate agent and a professional. And I feel like that first year, that was really what I was focused on. So when I had that first sale with my mom, she was actually looking in the market, and that was
Really
it was a yeah, it was cool. It was fun. She was very supportive. She's always been one of our biggest supporters. And again, the next sale came the following month from a close friend of mine, and then it was just
Snowball.
building the momentum. Right, it didn't blow up the first year. Second year was like steady growth, but that third year was really where it was kind of life changing. Where I think 1 month I had like what I always imagined, right? Like I have all these leads per se, all these people who know me and trust me, and all these people that tell me they want to buy and sell. It was like 1 June or maybe it was May. It all just lined up. It was like 4 or 5 sales in 1 month. It was just like money that I wasn't used to, income that I wasn't used to. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like I can really do this.
Yeah.
And then the following month, it was the same deal. It was like 3, then 2. And then I literally sold a house, at least one house every single month since that month. Like it's just,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's been an average of like 2.5 if you actually run the numbers every single month. So I'm very consistent. I'm very consistent. It's a lot of no's.
I want to take a quick moment to interrupt the podcast and talk about this video's sponsor, OA Alphas. OA Alphas offers high quality leads lists to help you grow and scale your online arbitrage business. Whenever I started getting into online arbitrage, leads lists were foundational for helping me understand the OA business and growing my business to its height. OA Alphas allows you to get profitable online arbitrage product leads every single day, Monday through Friday, in exchange for a set monthly fee. If you're looking to grow your online arbitrage business or gain back some of your time or learn more about OA, then I highly recommend you check out the link down below to visit oaalphas.com and start receiving those profitable leads every single day. Thank you, OA Alphas, for sponsoring this episode.
Well, you talked about consistency there, and you
Yeah.
talked about like learning. So you talked about like learning basketball and then pivoting and learning boxing.
Right.
And then you said in boxing that you really tapped into your own mind. Do you feel like that's played a big role in being able to like relate to people that you're trying to do transactions with, like really understanding your own mind and diving into that?
Yes, yes. I want to say yes and no, but yes in a way. I feel like me understanding the mind is just me understanding more of my thoughts, and the way that I feel really have a direct outcome of how my life plays out, and just having control over that and controlling those negative thoughts and those negative doubts. Like before a fight, it's very easy of what you have to block out, right? Like I might lose, I might do this. Like you just don't even think about it. Like you're just focused on, I'm coming here to win. I'm coming here to execute. I'm going to use my jab. I'm going to use my speed. I'm going to use my ring IQ, my athleticism. And with real estate, it's the same thing. It's just kind of reminding yourself the affirmations, right? Like I'm a top real estate producer. I'm an expert communicator. And going back to your question of how that relates with clients, when I got into real estate, I started reading a lot more, and I just fell in love with communication and just being able to connect with people in a genuine way.
Mm.
And I feel like that's been able to help me, just being able to communicate my value to clients, and even communicate with other real estate agents, right? That's a big part of being a successful real estate agent, is being able to communicate with the other real estate agent that you're working with. If example, I'm working with a buyer, I want to be able to communicate with that seller or that listing agent that my client is well qualified, and if you choose us, we're going to get to closing and your client's going to be stress free, and this is why you don't have to worry about my client's financing. They're motivated. There's just a lot of different aspects of how communication plays such a big role in getting deals done and having a successful real estate business.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So as you were talking, like one book came to mind. Have you heard of the book? It's a pretty popular book. Unfuck Yourself.
I've seen the cover. I've seen the cover. I don't really know much what it's about though.
No, you got to read it. It's a really good book, and it kind of talks about exactly what you're talking about, keeping those like well, so I got it because I wanted to better understand Cheryl, my wife,
Okay.
because I don't have that aspect in my brain where I have like negative thoughts. I've
Okay.
always been that like ignorant buffoon that just like puts caution to the wind and doesn't see any danger and just
Yeah.
kind of goes forward. And she's the opposite. She definitely like overthinks things, and then she has a lot of those like second thoughts and stuff along those lines. So I got the book to try to better understand like her way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was basically just talking about how negative thoughts impact you and working on words of affirmation and stuff like that, and positive thoughts, because if you say one negative thought out loud, it's as strong as you saying 20 positive thoughts out loud.
Yeah.
So in all aspects, even like in social media, you can see if there's like a negative headline, it gets a lot more attention than
Yeah.
anything positive that gets put out there. So it
Yeah.
just kind of breaks down the mind in that aspect and kind of makes you think of it in a different way. But anyways, that leads to kind of like my next question, because you and I are kind of similar
Yeah.
in our stages in life right now, right? So as obviously you and I both are gym rats, you can tell.
Definitely.
Um, but we both have families. You have two babies, toddlers, essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're both trying to create content. We're trying to run a business, and we're trying to manage our time as best as we can across the
Yeah.
board. What are some things that you do in your business to try to kind of manage everything and juggle everything and be present everywhere?
It's difficult, and it's always changing. And I've been asked this question a few times in different podcasts or just interviews, and the answer always changes. I'm gonna have to let my dog out in a second, but it always changes. More than anything, it goes back to building a solid routine, right? And that's what it goes back to boxing. Is like when I got in this business early on, I would wake up some days and I had no clients. I mean, I was just getting started in the business, and I wasn't used to having no boss, and not having a boss was different to me, right? Yeah, but time management is just having a routine, right? From just taking my daughter to school, coming back, being very efficient with my work, having a family. It makes you very intentional with the time you have. I'm sure you know, Cisco. It's just you really value those hours and those minutes. So until 5 p.m., I'm pretty much working the whole time. I'm either servicing current clients, I'm doing some lead generation, I'm doing some follow up, or I'm doing appointments. I'm going on showings, and then I have to pick up my daughter, or my girl will pick up my daughter, and then come home. I do my very best to be present after, like, say 5:30 or so, and spend time with my kids. There's obviously days where I have to make sacrifices, and it's just weighing everything out, right? It's just understanding that I'm still young. I just turned 30, but I'm still young. And I'm making sacrifice for my family. I think my family understands that. And I try to remind myself that too. Is like, hey, I am a good dad. I know I work a lot, and there's evenings, like even now it's a sacrifice, but I know that it's good for the business. It's good to share my story and to inspire others as well, of just sharing my story, maybe somebody with a similar background. But it's just trying to be present, like you said, everywhere I'm at. So when I'm at work, I do my best to lock in on work and put all the other stresses behind. When at home with my kids, I just love to just play with them and be present and make sure that I'm not on my phone, I'm not taking calls, and that's really what it comes down to. It's just my values. My business is a huge value. Family is a more important value to me, and fitness and just working out has always been something that's important to me as well. For me, I feel like I need it. Something I've always believed in is to be better for the people around you. You really have to take care of yourself. Like, if I'm in a bad place mentally, I'm not going to be the best me for my family and for my clients and for everyone that I'm around. So in order for me to do that, I got to work out. Like, I just have too much energy. It's just I got to do it. It's not like it's a painful thing for me to do. I really enjoy working out. So
Yeah. Me too. Me too. Me too.
I'm sure
No,
you do, man.
no. But no, I did, like, back in high school and early 20s. I really did like working out, and then I have no idea what the heck happened. Um, but kind of talking about, time management, I definitely feel your pains, because I go through the same thing, and I think for the longest time it was tough for Cheryl, because I would be working the 9 to 5 W-2 job, and
Yeah.
then we'd have all of Arya's activities, and then, like, once we put her to bed at night, I'd be working on the Amazon business, and then obviously
Yeah.
now we've included this podcast, but I got a hack, kind of,
Okay.
during Christmas. So I have this whole, like, desk set up here or whatever to try to be as productive as I can. But she really likes to watch, like, our shows at night,
Okay.
Traders, The Challenge, etc. So now I can work on my Amazon business
Okay.
and be in bed at the same time.
There you go. You,
That's
you
that's
got
what
to
you
figure
need.
you got to figure it out. And that's what you got to do sometimes, man. You got to just got to make it work. You just got to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are, like, some of your biggest pain points working with other real estate agents? Because obviously, you're either representing the seller or the buyer, and
Yeah.
then typically there's another agent across from you, or even builders in general.
It's a good question. Like I said before, the partnership and the reputation you have with other agents can really help you in this business, because you'll be alert of upcoming listings or off market listings, and you have a better chance of possibly getting your offer accepted if you have a good reputation of being an honest person, an educated person. Uh, the biggest pain point I would say is just bad communication with some agents. Some agents just have bad communication and don't keep you informed, or aren't as educated. Unfortunately, don't have that much experience, don't have a good mentor, don't have a good brokerage. And you almost sometimes feel like you're working both sides just to make sure that everything goes smooth for your client, whether I'm representing the seller or representing the buyer. It's my job to make sure that they feel a smooth, seamless transition, even if I'm going through headaches, right? Like, there's some transactions that my clients feel it's super smooth, and I'm so glad they feel that way. But in my mind, I know how many calls I had to make to the title, to the lender, to the other real estate agent. And yes, I mean, that's really it. But it's not that bad. I would say I met a lot of cool real estate agents that I've enjoyed working with. It's more positive than it is negative.
Yeah, yeah, and I can, and as far as, like, what you meant, like, the sometimes the client doesn't really know everything that you kind of go through, and the
Yeah.
headaches that you go through. Like, I think I shared with you the other day that we got a loan to close in 10 business days.
Yeah.
And man, they have no idea all the hoops, all like the favors and all like the rushes we had to go through to get it in there on time. So I definitely feel that.
It's a team effort for sure. You need a good lender, you need a good title company, and you need a good buyer's agent. And hopefully, uh, you need a good buyer's agent and listing agent, right? Listing agent is the agent who helps the seller for everything to go smooth. If one of those falls off, the whole transaction can take a wrong turn.
So you
Yeah,
mentioned a while back that you had a big network through like playing
yeah.
basketball and just like even from high school. So I'm curious about two things. I'm curious about one, what was it like going to your friends and your family and being like, hey, I'm selling real estate. Are you interested in, buying or selling? What was that like with friends and family? And then what was the transition to like strangers and people you don't really know and, trying to get to know each other and them trust you to buy or sell for them or with them?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. When I first got into business, like I said, I was doing a lot of training, and a lot of the training was revolved around cold calling, door knocking, doing things of that nature. So I started more that route. Now, a lot of
Okay.
people did say to call your sphere, like call your friend and have these horrible scripts that say, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent. You want to buy with me?" And I remember I tried it one time, and it sounded horrible
It's awkward.
with one of these coaches that I knew, and I feel like he knew I was reading off the script, and it was just like, man, I can't do this. So I did a lot of door knocking and code calling and all that. It actually worked pretty well for me, like in regards of having. It was easy. It wasn't something that I was nervous about or hesitant to do. I was like, these people don't know me. If they hang up on me, I really don't care. Door knocking was even easier because it was face to face, and it was much easier to build rapport that way. With my sphere, it kind of happened naturally. I use social media a lot. I've always documented my journey from when I was playing basketball. Just naturally, I wasn't an intentional content creator. I was just enjoyed using social media. Really, yeah. I was always documenting my journey, just letting people know I was in the gym training. So when I got into real estate, it was pretty natural for me to just document my journey. I wasn't super intentional with it, but one point within my like second year or maybe after my first year, in between somewhere there, I was just doing some accounting in my business in regards of seeing where my business was coming from. I was like, how much of it is coming from open houses? How much of it is coming from code calling, door knocking, etc.? And like 90% of it was coming from the people that I know, or a referral from somebody that I know, or social media. But social media was still people that I knew. It wasn't like a random person majority of the time, even though I would get those messages as well, right? So then I intentionally went all in on, let me actually take social media more serious. Let me post more content. Let me make more videos. This is before video blew up and everybody started talking about video is the way to grow your business. I just thought that if I constantly make videos about real estate, people will start reaching out to me. And that was a big turning point in my business. And I did do different things where I reached out to my sphere, friends, family, and just let them know. It was pretty natural. I just knew I was coming from a place of value. I knew I could legitimately help people and help them with buying or selling. And that's how I just kind of looked at it, right? It was a mindset of, I can help you. So hey, just letting you know, if you need help, give me a call. So it's pretty easy.
Yeah, 100%. And then like even the way that I met you was through word of mouth from a person who didn't even end up like buying a home with you because they
Yeah.
ended up just not buying a home in general. But then because they had such a great experience with you throughout the process, they referred you to us, and then obviously the rest is history. So yeah, it sounds like the way to go is to double down on your current network with referrals and then obviously social media. But that kind of leads me to my next question. Are you familiar at all with Ramit Sethi?
I'm somewhat familiar. I haven't read any of his work, but I've listened to some podcasts. I listened to some snippets, so I'm somewhat familiar. But I don't know his entire, you could say, mindset.
Yeah. So his whole like I guess shtick or his whole thing is that it's better to rent than to buy a mortgage, right? And
Yeah,
his whole thing is that in a lot of scenarios, your rent is going to be a lot cheaper than your mortgage. And then if and this is the problem that I have with it, right? And this is the problem that I have with like the Ramses of the world
yeah,
is
yeah,
one, most of the world isn't this like mentally strong to kind of follow this advice, right? It's
yeah.
great sound advice, but
Yeah.
90% of people aren't going to do it. But he says, let's say, the difference between your mortgage and your rent is $1,000.
Mhm.
Put that $1,000 into the stock market, and then that's it, and then let it grow. So I kind of wanted to get your opinion of that whole idea and
Yeah.
theology, I guess.
Well, from what I understand of his perspective, and I've heard of a lot of different people kind of take this approach of like, hey, it makes more sense to rent and invest the rest. It's just like kind of like you said, it's just harder. It's harder to do and not as practical for people to invest $1,000 every month into the stock market, into anything else. With housing, for me, I'm not saying don't do that and don't invest a certain portion into the stock market, into an index fund, but housing is a necessity. You need somewhere to live. And the average person who works a 9 to 5 or has an average income or doesn't have aspirations to be a super successful entrepreneur or make a bunch of income, it makes sense to buy a house. Like, you're going to own your property, own your real estate, and this is an investment that is leveraged, right? I mean, even with 5% returns, unless you're making a substantial amount of money from your W2 or your business, investing into the stock market, you can only see so much returns, right? You can see 5%, 10%. Obviously, it's doing great this year, but still, even then, you're only going to get a return on what you invest. With real estate, you're leveraging your price point, right? Because a 5% return for a $500,000 house is $25,000. After 2 years, that's $50,000 versus,
Oh, I know.
versus the stock
three,
market where
3 years, we exited with an extra 100K.
exactly my point. So it's just such a thoughtless investment in regards of you have to pay your mortgage every month. It builds your credit. You have a lot of different tax benefits as well, and it's proven over the history of time that as long as we've been measuring the markets, that real estate will withstand any 10-year cycle ever, right? So long term wise, you can't lose. It's just such an easy investment. So put yourself in a position to own real estate, and then after that continue to invest in the stock market. But I feel like owning real estate is such a simple investment that is more, um what's the word I'm looking for, it's easy to be done, it's capable, right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
doable, whatever.
All of the above. All
Yeah.
right.
So
So we have a segment here.
well,
This is
no,
oh,
my
go
bad,
ahead.
not to cut you off, but what I will say about that gentleman, I think he has something called his rich life, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That. So I do agree with that. I like that aspect of it. I feel like a lot of these different social media influencers, they take very one-sided approaches for clickbait and for to
Mm.
trigger people to respond, right? Where it's more of a, you really got to break down someone's personal situation, their financial situation, their goals. It will make sense for some people to rent right now versus buy. Not everyone should buy a house, but majority of people who have stable incomes and are responsible should definitely own a house. And that's my mindset. And I do believe that you need to figure that out on your own. Like, what is your rich life? What's your ideal life? And can real estate play a hand and a role in helping you get there? And I think it does for a majority of people, right? There's a reason people who own real estate, their net worth is more than 40x of renters, because it's just such an easy way to acquire equity, and it's tax free. Especially if you live in the property, you sell the home, you're going to be exempt for the first $250,000 of profit, right? If you're married, that's $500,000 of tax-free money. Where the stock market, you have short-term capital gains tax if you're trading, or long-term capital gains tax. Either way, you're going to get taxed, right? So again, I believe in both, but there's no right or wrong answer. I think everyone has a personal situation that you need to look at specifically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you added the little tidbit. You're what I call a shopping cart shopper. And basically what that means is there's different like things in life, right? That you don't fully buy into it 100%, but there's things that make sense to it that
Yeah.
you take on and kind of use it as, what you kind of believe in, right? There's shopping cart Christians who believe in certain things in the Bible and don't believe in other things. There's people that like Andrew Tate for some of the things that he says, but thinks he's outlandish on other aspects. And same, and I actually agree with kind of what you said with Ramit Sethi. There are a lot of things that I agree with him, and a lot of things are logical. To me, the math makes sense of what he's saying. It's just the execution part of it, right? To
Yeah.
me, it makes sense that I need to go to the gym and eat less calories to live a long, healthy life. It's just hard to do, you know?
Sure.
So no, I definitely kind of agree with the
Yeah.
overall what you were saying.
Things always look easier on paper. You can
100
write up the best plan, executing it's the difficult part.
exactly,
And
100%.
it's no ultimatum. I feel like too many people feel like they have to pick a side, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes a little from here, take a little from there. Like just do both. There's no
Yeah.
commitment, right?
You might start with renting the mortgage or whatever you're saying, and then later on when I'm making more, actually just go in and buy a place, right? I guess that's what you're kind of saying.
Just in general. I mean, like you said, like the whole thing with Andrew Tate, right? Is like some people hate him or some people love him. Same with me. I disagree with a lot of the stuff he says. I don't know him personally. Probably never will know him personally. And I agree with some of the things he says. And it's just that it is what it is.
Yeah. We
It's
we
Yeah.
like,
live we live in such like a nuanced world, but everyone sometimes wants to see it as black and white, and it's never really black and white.
exactly.
Um, great discussion there. But yeah, so that leads us to a new segment that you're actually going to be our first test subject in
Okay.
this segment, right? So it's so okay, so it's called repeat after me, okay?
Okay.
And I'm going to say a statement, and you repeat what I say, and then kind of finish it with very little thought, just kind of a reaction and your
Okay.
quick gut response. Okay,
I don't know these questions either, so they're gonna come straight off the sleeve. Let's get
let's
it.
go.
Right
Let's go.
on.
All right. If I were to become a realtor in 2024, first I would do what first?
If I were to become a realtor in 2024, I would let everyone know that I'm a realtor using social media, phone, everything in between.
The biggest mistake realtors make in 2024 is
The biggest mistake realtors make in 2024 is coming off as too salesy and not targeting the right audience. I feel like a lot of realtors target other realtors where they should be targeting the consumer.
the mindset you need to be successful is
The mindset you need to be successful is commitment, making the decision that you're going to be successful.
the best way to network is
The best way to network is organic relationships.
the best realtor is
The best realtor is your boy right here, Diego Abregu.
let's go. You can find me on socials at
Diego Abregu. So it's my full name at all socials is DIEGO ABREGU.
perfect. Thank you so much, Diego. Take care, everyone.
Thank you guys, man.